Good evening, scholars. Here we go. Unit 1, Lesson 2, Solving Linear Equations. So our first exercise, all we're doing is solving each of the following linear equations for the value of x. First thing we're going to always do is draw our wall. We need to get x isolated on one side. So to do that, I have to do the inverse operation. It's plus 5, so I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. 5 minus 5 cancels out to 0. Bring down my 3x equals 26 minus 5 is 21. I'm going to divide both sides by 3. X is going to equal 7. Now remember, we did this with the algebra review. So this should not be something that is completely new to you. We're going to do these ones really quickly so you can see them. B is 8x minus 7 equals 4x minus 5. Of course, I'm going to draw my wall. My goal is to isolate the x, so I need to get all the x's on one side. I'm going to move the 4x over to 8x, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm doing the inverse operation. And that goes away. I have 4x minus 7 equals negative 5. In order to get the x by itself, I have to get rid of everything else on that side. It is the 7 is being subtracted, so I'm going to do the inverse operation. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So then I have 4x equals 2. I'm going to move it up here just so I have a little bit more room. 4x equals 2. Then all I have to do is I have to divide both sides by 4. X equals 1/2. Looking at C, it's a little bit different. Remember, when you have division sign under everything, the first thing you have to do is get rid of what's underneath. So I'm going to draw my wall. I have x plus 8 divided by 2 equals negative 6. So it's the same thing as saying that x plus 8 is in parentheses. So I'm going to do the inverse operation of division, which is multiplication. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. Crosses that out. I have x plus 8 equals negative 12. Then I'm going to subtract 8 because I need to get the x by itself. And it's being added, so I have to do the inverse. So x equals negative 20. This one's a little bit trickier. I would suggest you pause the video and try to do it yourself to see what you come up with. First, draw my wall. I have to distribute on the left side. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times 4 is 24. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 equals 2x plus 20. I'm going to combine like terms. Over here I have 6x and negative 2x would give me 4x. I have 24 and 2, which is going to give me 26 equals 2x plus 20. Now I have to get all my x's on one side. So I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. That cancels out on the right. So I have 2x plus 26 equals 20. Now I'll subtract the 26 from each side. And 2x equals negative 6. And we divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 3. Now it's important to look at this and determine, move this down a little bit, to understand that each step in solving one of these equations can be justified by either using one of the properties of real numbers from the last lesson or a property of equality. such as additive or multiplicative properties. So exercise 2, we're going to justify each step involving with solving 2 times the quantity x plus 7 plus 4x equals 44 using either the property of real numbers, commutative, associative, distributive, or property of equality, which is additive or multiplicative. So the first one, you just look, how did we get from 2 times the quantity x plus 7 plus 4x equals 44? How did we get there? Well, we distributed. So the first one is just distributed. Then when you look how you got from this step to this, as you can see, I just switched the 14 and the 4x. So you're just changing the order, which makes it a commutative property. Now we're going to cross out this step because this is just doing one extra step that you don't need to do. So then how do we get from this step to this one? How do we get from 2x plus 4x plus 14 equals 44? Well, that would be combined like terms. So that's something you can write in there if you would like. Then we're going to look and we're going to get from 6x plus 14 equals 44 to 6x plus 14 minus 14 equals 44 minus 14. And that is the additive property because we are subtracting 14 from both sides. Even though we are subtracting, it's still called additive because essentially we are just adding a negative number. Then we're going to look, we have 6x equals 30. So in order to solve for x, we're going to divide by 6. And then again, we have multiplicative. Try to say that word 5 times in a row. Property of equality. There you go. All right, so now let's look at this. Strange things can sometimes happen when solving linear and other equations. Sometimes we get no solution at all, in which case the equation is known as inconsistent. Other times x will solve the equation in which any value of x will solve the equation, which is known as identity. So basically what I want you to think of, if it is a number equals a number, it's going to be identity. So that if a number equals, let me rephrase that for you. A number equals itself. So number equals itself. So like 2 equals 2. That's identity. If inconsistent is going to be if a number does not equal. So a number does not equal. It's a number equal to another number. Okay. This will make sense in just a minute. So let's look at this problem. We're just going to see if it's identity or inconsistent. So first thing I have to do is solve it. I would pause the video and try to solve it on your own just for the practice. Right here, I'm going to bring down my 6x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Using the distributive property, negative 2 plus 4 is negative 8. And I have 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is 6 plus x minus 5. Now I'm going to combine like terms. So I have 4x minus 8 equals 4x plus 1. I just took the 3x plus x, gives me 4x, and the 6 minus 5, which gives me 1. Next, I'm going to subtract the 4x from each side. So that cancels out both sides. So then I have negative 8 equals 1. Does negative 8 equal 1? Absolutely not. So the answer is inconsistent. Okay? It is not a solution. There is no solution. So it's inconsistent, or we also might say no solutions. You've probably heard it used that way. Okay? So now here we're going to do the same thing. It says exercise 4, An identity is an equation that is true for all values. Trying to solve them can lead to confusing situations. So we're going to consider this equation. 2x minus 6 plus x minus 1 equals 3 times the quantity x minus 3 plus 2. So I'm looking here, we're going to test the values. So when we test the values, the first thing I'm going to do is plug 5 in anytime I see x. 2 times 5 minus 6 plus 5 minus 1 equals 3 times 5 minus 3 plus 2. So I have 10. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. Minus 1 is negative 2. And I have, this is going to be 2 in here. So 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8. So I have 8 equals 8. It would be an identity because it equals each other. So I put identity. Both of those equal each other. Now let's try with 3. Let's see what that comes up with. So I have 2 times 3 minus 6 plus 3 minus 1 equals 3 times 3 minus 3 plus 2. So this would be 6 minus 6, which was just 0. So that goes away. 3 minus 1 is 2. 3 minus 3 is 0. So 3 times 0 is 0. So 2 and 2. So as you can see, it's identity here. Now go ahead and pause the video and actually solve it to show its identity. I went ahead and just did that, and I solved the equation, and I stopped right here where I have 3x minus 7 equals 3x minus 7. That's the exact same thing. So right away, I don't need to go any farther, and I can tell it's an identity property. Here, all we're doing is you need to go through and you need to determine which of the following equations are identities, which are inconsistent, and which are neither. Remember, if it's a number equals the same number, or equals itself, it's an identity. If it's a number that equals another one, it's inconsistent. If it has a solution, it's neither. So what I would like you to do before tomorrow's lesson, as just kind of a practice, how about we do A and C? I would be ready because I have a feeling one of these will be on the Do Not tomorrow. Have a great night, and we'll see you Monday.